Next, we'll move on to the menu of tools that you have in your bikeway accommodation toolbox, starting off with off-road bikeways. The one that a lot of people think about, especially if you're a non-bicyclist, are the trails that are on their own rights of way, whether it be along an expressway like the Suncoast Trail or along a railroad corridor. We have a whole lot of those in Florida, and so on. So these tend to be very popular facilities. If they're within a town, it often forms the backbone of that town's bike network. One thing I do want to mention about these trails is that if you are trying to add one where they're in a residential area or in a town and that trail does not yet exist, it really pays off to learn what effects come from building a trail, because it's very, very common to get opposition from residents that the trail is going to bring crime, it's going to lower our property values, and so on. Luckily, the Rails to Trails Conservancy has studied that, and they have documentation. So I'd recommend, if you're working with a government agency, to study that before the opposition arises. A special kind of trail alongside of a roadway has a couple of different names. I like to call it a side path, and it's basically a widened sidewalk. The standards generally call for it to be at least 10 feet wide with a buffer from the street. And side paths are really best for the busier and faster roads that do not have a lot of road crossings. As it turns out, as roads do have a higher speed limit, you don't have as many driveways, side streets, and so on. So side paths do have problems at intersections. We'll go through that a bit in the next slide. So in places where you don't have a lot of intersections and the roads are much busier and faster, this is a fairly appropriate treatment. And it does appeal to a wide range of bicyclists. I will also add that the act of widening a 5-foot residential sidewalk to 10-foot side path width in front of someone's front yard generally does lead to opposition from people who don't want to lose their front yard, don't want to have to cut down their landscaping, and so on. What happens at intersections with side paths or even side paths is a function of where drivers are looking when they make their turns. So imagine the car that's on the right trying to make a right-hand turn. And this slide tries to show where that motorist generally is looking, waiting for a gap in traffic before turning right. If you're bicyclist number 1 heading toward the intersection, maybe that driver will see you. If you're bicyclist 2 going against the flow of traffic, chances are you're not going to be seen. So the statistics are actually pretty bad for bicyclists going against the flow of traffic on a side path or a sidewalk. And it's all about visibility and expectation. Also, in the last 20, 30 years, intersections have been designed so that you have larger turning radii, and that puts the stop line and the crosswalk farther back, where it's often a place where a car won't stop. The car will often stop in front of the crosswalk, maybe even in front of the crosswalk, sorry. If you do have a large intersection, one way to deal with that problem is to add right corner islands. These are sometimes called pork chops. And what it does is it breaks up the crossing into 3 different pieces. It makes it so that the crosswalk can be closer to the parallel street. And it does reduce a lot of those conflicts with turning cars.